But I love that. I love the idea that you can spend time appreciating your materials as part of your ritual.
It is cool.
Because some materials you just kind of like have fallen in love with, right? So why not acknowledge that love and just take that time to appreciate it? Hello, all you mindful creatives out there. Thank you for joining us on the Sage Arts Podcast. And I do say us because I am Sage, if you don't know that already. and
I think they would by now.
You would, right?
Yeah.
Well, only if they've actually listened to it more than once. But what if this is the first time they listen to it?
That's true.
You know, that's why I have to say it's me all the time. It always sounds weird, but yeah. It's me, it's Sage. And then the other voice is...
Brett.
Brett.
I'm here again.
So I'm here with Brett in the podcast room, and we're trying out the lounge situation here. So I think I mentioned in a previous episode, last episode maybe, that I moved this bed loungy thing that I have because I have this very strong belief that every creative area has to have a place to nap. This has always been my thing. But in any case, it's now in the podcast room, and Brett is trying it out.
Yeah, not bad so far.
How's that cozy corner?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much room for other people. So if some more of you want to come join us, I think, how many people we get, like another 3, 4, 5 people. Well, it depends on, I would say it depends on how much personal space you need.
That's true, though. No, you could easily fit 3 people.
Yeah. And we left the dogs out because we weren't sure how that was going to go.
Yeah.
So it's just us.
Yep.
But we have this thing before we start recording.
A ritual.
Yes.
I beat you to it. Sorry.
You beat me to it. Hey.
I really embraced it.
Yeah. We have a ritual.
I tried to anyway.
Yeah, you did.
How'd I do? I did pretty good.
You did good,
baby. I'm just like, oh my gosh, let's just get talking.
Yeah. Well, what happened was we were just having lunch, and as we do, we start talking about random whatever and philosophizing about something. And I don't know what we were talking about, but then we started talking about rituals associated with what we do.
I was asking you if you had a flat, long brush that I could borrow. And then you described this whole thing you do about your ritual with it, like how you clean it, why, of course, you clean it, and all the good reasons there. And my response was like, I just use it and then put it in some water.
And that's why I had to say something, because I was like, okay, if you're going to use my brushes, honey, you have to treat them nice.
With respect, and I would, of course.
Because I like my brushes to last a long time.
Yeah, I know you...
You try to buy some decent brushes, so you spend that money, you're like,
yeah.
If I had disposable, that'd be
and
different.
waste materials, too, but you make the people who sell brushes very happy. They
you
make
the people who sell brushes very happy.
They count on people like me. No, I'm not that bad.
No, you're not that bad. We were talking about, what I do to clean it and whatnot, and then you said it's like a ritual, and then we started talking about rituals in art, and we realized this should be a podcast.
Yeah.
So we did our pre-recording ritual, which is usually to make a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and situate ourselves and get everything placed in the room and then test and make sure everything's going to
And there's all kinds of sound tests and putting on the headphones right and getting near the microphone in the right way. So everything's clear.
So we did our little ritual, and now we're talking to you. And we wanted to talk about rituals, not because there's we have a strong feeling like everybody has to have a ritual, but I don't know if a lot of people realize they have rituals. And sometimes when we're really busy or, we're thrown, right? And we can't do our usual thing. Sometimes we continue to be thrown throughout our studio session or the process, whatever it is that we're trying to take care of. If we don't do our rituals, I think sometimes we continue to have whatever was going on beforehand still kind of existing with us in the studio, in our creative time. So we just thought we'd take a moment to just talk about our rituals and take a moment to appreciate the fact that rituals are actually a really useful and meaningful thing for a lot of people. Now, not everybody has any particular ritual, but I think a lot of people do, and they may not even know they have rituals. So as we're talking about our rituals and why we do it and why we think it's important, think about your rituals. Think about what it is that you do that might help you get into your work, may help you kind of exit and transition from your creative time into your day-to-day or whatever it is. And there's probably rituals during the creative process, or like when you finish a piece. Some of us have rituals as well. And we just thought it would be fun to acknowledge it and talk about what we do and let you have the opportunity to think about what it is that you do and just kind of giving yourself a measure, giving your rituals a measure of what they mean to you and your creative process. So in any case, yeah, Brett, do you want me to start?
No.
With my, no.
Yeah, no, this whole conversation started with me asking for a paintbrush, or to borrow a paintbrush, and then it got me thinking about my rituals, you know, and how much they mean to me without even being that conscious of it. I just do these certain things. I'm not as articulate as you are when it comes to how many levels of things you do. Well, you're doing acrylic painting right now, right? So that takes a lot of organization. Yeah. I would be less inclined to do it because of that.
Do as much.
Yeah.
But you actually
more
started,
immediate, you know.
In the conversation, you said, I don't have a ritual. I have to get to it. I have to get to my stuff right away.
I mean, I do have a little, it's like make a cup of coffee or tea or whatever. Yeah. And then sometimes sharpening a pencil would be a good part of a ritual.
Yeah, didn't you say, like, back in the day when you did storyboards on actual paper that you sat down and you'd sharpen like a whole bunch of pencils or something like that?
On actual paper. It's crazy to say that. But yeah, I would sit there and sharpen one after the other, and just the sound of it would kind of
lull you into the state of creativity.
It cues me to be like, okay, I'm going to go to, get into the zone kind of thing. Yeah. Go to an area that you don't just turn on and off like a switch. It's pretty immediate though. Like I get right to business.
Well, you think about, like they talk about a lot of our senses. We use our sense of sight and hearing so much. But also sense of smell, sense of touch. So all those things that you do in a ritual are kind of cues to your physical being that you're going to be going into this other mode, and your brain is going to follow.
It's like changing gears.
Yeah.
You're stepping into more abstract kind of place where
thinking, the creativity.
You're applying your skills that you know, but then also as you do it, you get into flow.
Yeah, and sometimes it's really hard to get into. Some people have a harder time to get into it than others.
Generally, yeah.
Especially if you've been like, I get up in the morning and I try to write first thing in the morning, and then I take care of all the things that will be hanging over my head. Like
very organized
the grocery shopping and the laundry and the accounting and all those stuff. Because I want that stuff out of the way before I can get to my creative stuff. But then you have to transition from that banal, boring, whatever, this other way of thinking. But the thing is, it can be hard to transition from the kind of day-to-day taking care of life things into the creative time. And so for me, the ritual is really important. And I never really thought of it as a ritual until we just started talking this afternoon. But it's true. I do have rituals for all of my things that I do. And I mean, definitely, I think for most people, making a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or, Well,
you listed like 5 things that you do, minimum. Yeah. So then remember what I was saying was like, well, what if, you're a do-it-now person. So what if, you put on your apron, and the apron string is broken.
I would go
and you're
fix
like,
it.
She would go sew it. So what if every step of the way, every little part of your ritual has a thing that takes you down another rabbit hole? And
I would say, today the universe decided I was not going to be doing this.
What if you didn't have the right color thread and you had to go to Ace to go pick it up? See? And that's like, afternoon.
Why do you go to Ace?
Yeah. Oh, I'm just advertising Ace, I guess. No.
That's the hardware store.
Yeah.
I think I got to go to Joann's. Yeah.
That's our.
Anyways.
Yeah, Joann's. Yeah.
In any case, most people will get together, whatever kind of beverage they're going to have for their session, and turn on the lights and plug in the machines if there's machines that need to be plugged in, and put out the supplies if there's supplies that are normally stored. So like my acrylic painting process, my ritual for that is different than like for my polymer clay. And we were talking about this when I worked as a working artist. It was primarily polymer clay that I worked with. And I had a really short ritual. I made my tea or coffee or whatever. And then I sat down, I cleared my table because there was always ever, this giant, how big is that table I have out there? I've had that same table for a while. It's
it's huge.
6 feet by 4 feet surface, right?
Yeah.
So it's a pretty good, big working surface. But I would always end up with a 10-inch square of clear space that I could actually work in.
Wow.
Because there's so many things involved. So polymer clay was a pretty simple thing. If I didn't put my tools away at the end of the last time, put the tools away so I know where everything is, and then spray down the tabletop and clean it so there's no lint or anything that would get into the clay. And then would just jump in. I was saying it was kind of different for me because when I was doing that kind of work, I was a full-time artist. and designs for polymer. And what I wanted to try next was a constant presence in my mind. It's almost like I never left that state of mind most of the time, because I'd get up, go to the studio, work all day, and then go to sleep and get up and do it again.
Yeah.
Right? So those of you who are working artists probably do the same thing. But I think the transition from whatever I would do first thing in the morning that I had to do before I could go into the studio and just work was not that much, not that long. And I didn't need a big ritual to get into it. My ritual was very short. It would last all of a minute or so, 2 minutes maybe. And then I'd just sit down and work. But I always knew what I was doing, and I always had a series of things going, and I had a list of stuff I had to make for the next show and that kind of thing. With the acrylic stuff, because I'm more in a learning phase too right now, I go in, I do all my water cups, organize my brushes, and get out my canvases and get out the paints and get out the mediums. And it's like this whole long thing.
Yeah.
But it gives me a lot of time to think about what it is I want to do. And then most of the time, I didn't have much of an exit ritual in my process. Like when I was finished for the day or finished for the session, in polymer, a lot of times it would be wrap up the clay so it doesn't get lint and dust on it. And that would be about it. That would be about the only thing I did. With the painting, you got to take care of the brushes and you got to clear things out and make sure everything's closed up so things aren't drying out. And I go into the garage and I have a little setup for cleaning my brushes, and I just sit there and I clean my brushes. But I really appreciate being forced to do that, because then I sit there and I review what I did for that session. What did I do that I liked? What did I do that I felt accomplished? What did I do that I would like to do different or better? Or what would I like to try next time?
Yeah.
And then having had those thoughts, when I do my ritual to start the next day or session, I already kind of know what it is I want to do. And it makes moving into the creativity,
easier.
Moving into that session a lot easier.
You never quite articulated it like that. Yeah. That's good. So, that's really interesting.
And I just thought, wow, I really appreciate that ritual.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, since I wasn't thinking about my past in terms of doing a ritual, if the days where things were harder and I was struggling and I felt like the whole day was off, I'm wondering if I skipped rituals some of those times. Because I think you do these things and your body becomes so used to this being part of the process that if you skip it, you're thrown. Like your system is thrown, like your brain is like, wait, we skipped a step. I don't know. I mean, for some people, it probably wouldn't matter at all. But I wonder for a lot of us, if we recognize our rituals and understand that they are a important part of our process.
Or an important procrastination to our process.
It is partly procrastination.
It is.
I know it can be for me, but it gives you time to think, and it gives you time to mentally get into it.
It's transitioning, yeah.
Yeah, you just have to kind of, have some reins and be okay. I'm not going to fix this apron string. I'm just going to get to work. It's fine.
Yeah, the important thing that we're there for is to sit and do it.
Sit and do it. So my ritual has become really important, both the intro, or what would you call it, getting into the work ritual, and then the exiting the work ritual has actually become really important to me, because I am in more of a learning phase and I'm not 24/7 thinking about the work and the design, because I'm not a working artist like I used to be. So now for you, I find your insight on this interesting, because you have a day job that is creative, and it's creative, but you also, because you're a director, you do a lot of managing people.
Yeah.
So you have both of those things during your day. And then I don't know, I guess you should tell us, are you doing your creativity in the morning and then also in the evening and then also on the weekends for yourself? Or how is that working for you right now?
It's been touch and go, because it gets so busy.
So have you established rituals before you begin? And if you have, do you find there are times where you don't do the rituals, that it makes it harder, or does it make any difference to you to have that?
I don't know. That's a really, really good question. Because I don't think it makes that much of a difference. It depends on the circumstances. Yeah, if I have the time, like for instance, I know I have 3 hours without interruptions or something, I might take my time getting into it and setting up everything. Maybe you're even organizing my area, because right now it's actually a big mess, But I really like things in their place.
Well, you're working with alcohol inks.
Alcohol inks right now. Just
and brush pens and things like that, right?
Just experimenting, yeah.
So maybe there's not as much preparation for some of that stuff, but is there not still a whole, like, I'm going to sit down and do this ritual?
Well,
you put on music usually, or,
sometimes lately I've been just doing silence.
Yeah, I'm really big on silence in the creative mode, but that's just me.
Yeah, certain music that has no words,
Yeah. So we have had a hard time getting into creative stuff, but you managed a few things this weekend.
Yeah,
right?
I did. Yeah, I got a little.
Was there a ritual involved in getting into those that allowed you?
I think it's like an active assertion initially, because I guess I've been so busy. I mean, my energy's lower or something. But that said, once I sit down and I turn my light on and start looking at like whatever, the tip of a pen or a pencil, and I just look at the materials and the way the light's hitting it, and it just sort of inspires me, I guess, and I'll just start to make lines. And
so isn't your ritual then kind of an appreciation of your materials?
Yeah, it might
like
just be
the aesthetic appreciation of your materials.
Yeah.
Well, why not?
Yeah, I guess so. I bet I'm not the only one, too.
Yeah,
I bet there's lots of people who feel that way.
When I did, I did the backsplash for our kitchen with granite, copper, and glass. And I know I spent time with the materials beforehand and really appreciating the materials because it was just beautiful.
See, that's cool.
After working with polymer for so long, and I love polymer and obviously nothing against it, but to actually have real granite in my hands and not a polymer that looks like granite, part of it is when you're doing mosaics, you are picking individual pieces to go in, and some of the stuff would be very in areas that were going to be seen a lot or directly under a light or whatnot. And so I would spend some time looking for the best pieces, but also appreciating some of the granite was just so beautiful with these little rust lines that would come through them all of a sudden, this just a really evenly speckled striation of granite in just like a pure black and white kind of thing. And I just,
So what was your ritual? You were sitting down and would you organize the colors together? Or?
Well, I had trays with all the different colored glass and then long, thin pieces of granite.
So did you organize them?
Well, they were more or less organized to start with, but I'd pull them out, lay them all out. And then I would start picking through and being like, okay, I'm going to start this new section. Which pieces do I want to be kind of front and center? And in the process of going through that, I would take time to appreciate the materials.
So did you do an eeny, meeny, miny, mo sort of process?
I don't eeny, meeny, miny, mo much of anything.
And then just this one, and you just put it up there.
But I love that. I love the idea that you can spend time appreciating your materials as part of your ritual.
It is cool.
Because then just kind of, I don't know, some materials you just kind of have fallen in love with, right?
Yeah.
So why not acknowledge that love and just take that time to appreciate it in that framework?
Because I think it just comes from childhood too, having always drawn a lot of really cool things happen with a pencil or a pen, So you start to appreciate your relationship with the, like you're saying, the material. Yeah.
Is there any kind of transitional ritual that you use between types of work that you're doing? I was trying to think if I did that. I don't know if I do.
Well, I guess, there's the alcohol inks have like an eyedropper at the top and you have to drop it in, the pigment into like a little palette tray thing.
Yeah.
So, there's a little bit of that, but usually I'm just like, oh, just do it, but
a little impatient.
The reason for that, I was thinking about it. And the reason for it is I grew up on, markers.
Oh.
And it's just instant. The only thing to do is pull a cap off,
right.
And then there's your color, and you could mix and you could do some cool things with it. So that was my whole childhood and for a long time.
Yeah.
And then I started painting in college a little bit, and I discovered that I was impatient with the materials.
You didn't mix colors, did you?
I did not learn to mix colors properly.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the basics, but there's a whole art, of course, to mixing colors.
Yeah. Well, I have actually known quite a few people in say polymer, because we deal with color, lots of color, and big artists too, who are like, I never mix colors. I just do it straight from the package. I've never learned to mix colors.
Huh.
And it's like,
that makes me feel better.
Yeah, no, it's not, I don't think you have to with the stuff that's out there. I mean, I do think it limits what you can do. I love mixing because I love being able to say, there's this thing in my head and I want to create that exact thing.
I envy that a lot. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Color mixing can be a fantastic ritual, I think. I did a lot of that. I would sit down with my clay, and I know a lot of people that would do this when they worked in polymer clay, who'll sit down and mix all their colors first, and then you're just sitting there, and it's nothing you have to really think too deeply about. If you've chosen a palette for the year, a lot of people, especially if they're production level, they're doing wholesale or whatnot, they will pick a palette for the year. And then they will just sit down and mix those colors. When they need to sit down and make whatever they're making, they mix the colors they need for that project or those projects. And that is a big part of the ritual, I would say, that they start their session with. So if you have something like that where you can spend some time preparing, I think, especially if you have a hard time getting into the work initially, that is a way to get your mind set that we're in creative mode, but it's going to be easy and it's going to be kind of a Zen entrance into it by doing something like mixing colors or like I do with my setup and
those things need to be done.
They need to be done anyways.
So why not incorporate them as a ramp up instead of I'm speaking for myself.
Yeah.
Instead of I'll just get this out of the way so I can get doing the thing.
Yeah. But you can look at that in and of itself as being something that's not just, I have to get this thing out of the way, but it is the ritual that tells your brain and your body, this is what we're going to be doing. You can relax into it. Your brain can move from whatever state it was in previously, like you were doing your bills or whatnot. Now you're going to go into creative mode. It actually gives you a transition.
Yeah, escape hatch,
All that.
Yeah.
But it's so it's kind of like mindfulness. Because you stop and you look at the things that you need for that session, and you can stop and appreciate your materials. If you're mixing colors, then you stop and you're just thinking colors, and you don't have to think about the design and the construction or whatever it is that you have to put into the project that day. And I think it makes it a really nice ease into what you're doing. And I personally appreciate that opportunity to slow down, do something really simple and easy, but that's also going to prepare me for hopefully a really good and successful session. And like color mixing, like with my acrylics, I mix as I go, but that's because acrylics dry so fast you can't like do a whole lot of pre-mixing unless you put retarders and mediums in it. But anyway, it's a whole nother thing. But like in polymer clay, you can mix as you go. And I know a lot of people who do that. But what a thing to just spend some time at the beginning mixing all this stuff and then talk about there's no interruption from that point. You've mixed all your colors, they're sitting there waiting for you, and then you just start cutting and forming and go, and you just start putting things together from already pre-mixed clay, and you don't have to stop and do that.
That's great. Yeah.
And I think because every time you stop to do some preparation work during your creative process, it's probably going to be a shift.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to use your brain differently.
Yeah.
For a moment.
Like mixing colors is definitely a different brain mode than designing something.
It's like if you're on a racetrack, it's like you're pulling over for a pit stop.
Oh, pit stop.
Yeah. Okay, pit stop. But they're all part of it. I think they're all the thing that kind of gets us there. Yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, we just wanted to stop and talk about the rituals so you have the opportunity to stop and think about what it is that you do to get into your work, or what do you do during the process to transition from one thing to another.
That'd be a fun thing to hear people's
I would
rituals.
love to hear that.
Because like some people might just okay, they need to break something. Maybe that's the first thing they need to do,
And that's funny. I feel like I just talked about this. Maybe I didn't. I used to, when I was in art school and I was doing painting, I was doing independent study in the last semester, and I was having a really hard time with just some personal stuff. And so I had something I called a slash canvas. Really, I took some leftover stretcher bars and I made this really strangely proportioned. It was like 18 inches wide and like 4 feet tall or something. So this big, long thing. And I would just do whatever I wanted to when I came in. And that was actually my ritual for painting then, is that I would just
slash it a few times.
Sometimes it would be slashed. Sometimes I would just throw paint on it. Sometimes I would just grab whatever.
So these aren't
modeling
precision
paste and throw it.
These aren't
it
precision cuts. These are like. Whoosh.
Well, I called it a slash canvas because one of the first things I did after I started painting on it was I took an X-Acto to it and put a big slash in it.
Yeah.
And then I took some needle and thread and I stitched it back up. And then I slashed another part on like a week or two later.
Okay.
And so I started calling it a slash canvas because that represented the feeling I had.
Yeah.
That I could just take out whatever frustration or anything that was bothering me on this canvas. I could just slash at it.
Yeah.
And whether it was a literal slash or I was just throwing paint on it in a slashing motion, whatever. So it was my ritual to go in and just attack this canvas with whatever.
Wow. Intense.
It would get things out.
With the
it would
materials.
also make me a little less precious with my materials.
God, it's true. All that stuff costs, especially in college.
Yeah,
right?
when you're in college and you have this,
like,
I was making like, I don't know, like $250 an hour.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago, but I didn't make a lot of money. And so all this stuff was precious to me, but at the same time.
So then it made it hard to be creative in it.
Sometimes
because you're like, I don't want to waste this paper or this canvas.
So I was like, look, you have to let go of that. If you're going to do what you want to do.
I literally just will go into a page and just start scribbling. And then just to break it in,
I used to do that. I still do that with sketchbooks. The first like page, but the inside cover.
Yeah.
I just draw whatever. I just put stuff down.
It's like whatever page
doodle,
kind of thing.
Because you just need to it not be completely blank because it's so intimidating.
It's like staring back at you.
Pages and pages of perfection.
Yeah, I don't
I
don't stare at the white page I put stuff down because
you do that all the time.
That way,
you're so good at that.
Yeah, that way, even if you do terrible things, like things that you just hate, you're like, okay. Well, I can do better than
Not
that.
Terrible things like you didn't beat somebody up or.
Yeah, no, just like the drawings or if I do thumbnails or something, it's like, I just put anything down.
Yeah,
and that'll give me something to build off of.
Yeah,
and then it gets better.
That's kind of a little ritual too. You get a clean sketchbook and you got to do something to it right away. It's got to be a working sketchbook.
Yeah,
as soon as it gets into your hands. I know I'm like that too. Yeah. So there's little rituals through all of this stuff and
micro rituals.
Micro rituals. I like that. I like taking this time to appreciate that we do have these rituals and try to think about what it is that they do for us and what they mean for our work and our process. And then those times where we're tempted to not do the rituals, could be something that you need to stop and think, hey, is this worth it? Is the extra 5 minutes I'm going to get worth me not doing this ritual because I'm not going to do what I usually do and my system, my body, my brain is not going to feel settled potentially. I mean, for some people, it's not going to matter. For some people, it makes no difference whatsoever. Like I said, when I was a working artist, it didn't matter because my brain was always there anyways. But for those of us who have a lot of other things that we do.
Busy. Yeah.
Like doing the podcast is a very different kind of mental creativity because it's teaching,
Right. And
versus sitting down and actually doing my work.
Because then when you're actually sitting down doing your work, you're more in the abstract, the unknown. Like you don't, you probably have a plan of what you're going to do in some way if I know you, but but you're still not sure what it's going to be and how it's going to, like what you're going to tap into, the thing that reveals itself.
Yeah, it does. And all this stuff, the whole, the revealing happens in the process of in everything that I do.
And that's the cool part,
Yeah. And
not like cool, man. I mean, more like that's just the good part.
But it's good to have that kind of like get into that mental state because you're more open to those things revealing themselves. Like sometimes I think I'm going to sit down and I script out the podcasts because I'm not always able to talk coherently. I don't know how to put that.
You're telling me.
I don't. We do. I do so much better when I'm talking to you.
Really?
Yes. I don't know. I guess because we just have this mode that we are always in.
Yeah.
But if I try to just sit down and like talk out a podcast without scripting something first, I will stumble all the time.
Oh, I see.
And
see, a conversation's different because we're bouncing off of each other.
Yeah. Anyways, I don't know what that has to do with
work.
ritual, but
here we are. Yeah.
But this is our conversations.
Yeah,
this is how
the
our
way we talk
conversations go.
over lunch today, and in general, you know. So, I think there's a real fun quality to just letting that all unfold in front of us, but it is like, no net kind of thing. Like,
no net.
Well, what are you going to say now? I have no idea.
Well, today we had no net because we were talking at lunch, and I'm like, this is a great conversation.
It is a good.
And I'm like, do you want to go do this? And I think we're actually procrastinating because we have to clean the garage.
Yeah, I don't think I want to do it.
It's like, hey, you want to do a podcast?
After talking about this, I want to go to my room and do some stuff.
I know, right? Mm-hmm. So I'll go to the garage.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you're going to organize the tools.
I got to organize the tools. Yeah.
I'll take the puppy and.
Wow, your day's sounding a lot more fun than mine. Oh, but before we get too off course, what if someone doesn't have a ritual? Do you think that's something people can invent, or should they look into? I don't know. Lighting a candle, I think you said earlier.
Well, I'm sure everyone has a ritual. Maybe they're not conscious of it, but if maybe there's ones you could add or invent, I think candlelight puts me in the mood.
Yeah.
So I invented that at one point. I think in college I started doing that, and it's not something I did before that.
Yeah. So if people are listening to this and thinking like, I don't have a ritual. I just jump into it. Now, maybe for some people that is all they need. They just need to get into it. They don't need to do any of this kind of stuff.
I'm kind of that way, but I have a few things.
But do you think people should try it out? Like, let me try having a little ritual, whether it's making my tea and sitting down and admiring my materials, or
maybe it's stretching, like doing some yoga
doing
poses.
Some yoga?
Yeah.
That's actually not a bad idea.
It's really
honestly,
kind of a good idea. Because you breathe and you get out.
And you relax and you probably get your brain waves and
change gears.
Into, what is it? The creative brain waves?
Yeah.
Alpha, maybe. I can't remember.
Remember alpha beta when we were kids?
Beta.
Yeah. That's a West Coast thing.
Yeah, no, I don't know if people should invent a ritual. That seems like you're trying to put something into place that doesn't naturally exist.
That's a good point, I suppose.
But maybe if you find yourself having a hard time getting into the work, if it takes you a while to get into the work, maybe ritual could be something. And it could be as simple as cleaning your table, or it could be looking through what you did the previous session or the previous day or the last time you worked. But for some people, ritual won't probably be a big thing. Maybe trying it out or trying a few things to see if there's some kind of preparation for the work that is helpful, or
taking an ice bath. Do that. Yeah. What would be the craziest ritual? Yeah, that'd be a lot.
Oh, there could be all kinds of crazy rituals, right? But yeah, we probably don't have time to get into all the potential. But I have really valued that exit ritual, my cleaning of my brushes and organizing my space and that kind of thing. I find the reviewing what I did to be really, I don't know, it's like downtime for me almost. It's like, okay, I'm going to not just jump from this creative stuff to the next thing. I'm going to take some time to appreciate what it is that I just did. And that's a mindfulness thing, right? That you are in the moment, realizing the value of the moments that you've just been living.
And like you were saying earlier, it's a level of awareness.
Yeah.
And being very present in what we're choosing to do.
In what we're doing, yeah. Yeah. Which, some people might not find that helpful, but I think, considering all of the research and the material that is out there about being more mindful and being more present in the moment, because it's the only thing we ever know that we have is that moment that we're in. This very moment is the only thing we know we're going to have. That have an appreciation for that will probably bring more, joy to the work, more fulfillment to know that you are allowing yourself and giving yourself this time. So maybe it's just a matter of giving yourself that time to appreciate what you've done. Yeah. And I think if we don't stop to think about what it is that we're doing and why we like it and why it works for us, don't even realize what it is that we appreciate about what we're doing. And having that exit time for me is what that is. It's appreciating what I just did, recognizing my successes, because I think that's super important, because a lot of times we can just beat ourselves up over what we didn't accomplish. But if you're taking that time to look at your successes, looking at, what you liked about what you did, as well as what you want to try to do differently or better or, explore next time, is really grounding for yourself as an artist.
When I was in figure drawing a lot, I would make a commitment to not look at anything that I did that day at the end of a session. That was part of my ritual.
Because you would critique it.
I would hate everything.
Yeah.
But then if I look back on it in a day or two, then I'm like, then I see the progress, or I can appreciate it like someone else did it and look at it a little bit more objectively.
And that could be a great initial ritual getting into the work, because you look back at what you did, because the day of, you're ready.
It's too raw.
Yeah, you're ready to just say, ooh, I suck.
Yeah.
It's maybe because you're so close to it at that time, all the areas that you were frustrated in, the areas that their mistakes are at. But if you come back to it later, you may have forgotten all that stuff, and you just kind of see it with fresh eyes and go, oh, look at those beautiful lines I did. Oh, look at the way I shaped that. That was great. Because you don't have that awareness of the struggle that you went through as much. It's not like out front. So yeah, that's probably a really good thing to do as well. So look at what you did previously, but only if it's given yourself enough time to set aside all those things that may have bothered you in the process of doing it. And come to appreciate the things that you did well. And I just think that's really, really important, to spend time seeing what we do well. If you can come back to it later, and that could be an opening ritual for you to get into your work, is to look at what you did previously and get yourself excited about, look what I can do. I'm so good.
Yeah. I guess you get the pat on the back thing, I suppose, but more importantly, the experience of doing it should be the thing that draws us.
No, for some people, yeah, it definitely is. And some people, the end result is. So there's that thing. There's some artists are into the journey and some people are into the destination.
Yeah.
Some people are into both, and either to differing degrees. So, but
that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. So there you go. That's another ritual. So if you don't have a ritual to get into your work, maybe looking at what you previously did, especially if it is bolstering to you, if it encourages you, if it proves to you that you're good at what you do, and not just remembering how frustrated you were last time trying to do something, but you can stop and look and go, oh my gosh, that was really cool what I did. Yeah. So think about your rituals, or if you don't think you have them, whether that's something that you'd want to do and what kind of ritual might be useful for you. And if you do have rituals, I think just an awareness of that could be good for you to know when to not ignore it, when it's useful for you. And you can even build on it a little bit without procrastinating too much to get into your into your process.
You really got me thinking about it a lot.
Yeah.
And that's the fine line when it becomes procrastination, I guess.
Yeah, it could be.
But, it depends on how much time you have to sit down, what kind of chunk of time you have ahead of you.
And then intro rituals, extra rituals, exit rituals, I guess.
Rituals, yeah.
What is our exit ritual for the podcast? Oh, it's been like 2 hours. We got to stop this now.
I got to walk the dog or
something. Yeah,
something comes up. So we got to go. See you. Thanks. It's been fun. Woo! No, it's good.
But hopefully this has been an interesting thought process for you to become aware of what it is you do, either before, during, after, or like when you finish. I was thinking there's probably rituals when you finish a project. You go, you take a picture of it, or you show it to your significant other, or, you just
hang it on the wall.
You go get a drink because you did it. So rituals like that, I think, are important too. And I think it's not just the rituals telling our brains to do what they need to do to get into the mode or to review what you've done for the day, but to also just stop and appreciate the experience and the process and realize that this is a huge part of why we do what we do usually, the process itself. And so I think the rituals will help in having us appreciate and probably be happier in what we're doing because we have stopped to think about it and have that glass of wine when we finish the project or have the glass of wine when you finish the session. But yeah, before we go do that, really quickly, if you would like to tell us about your rituals, because we would love to hear what you do for getting into your work, getting out of your work, in the middle of your work, any of that, write me at thesagearts.com. There's a contact page there. If you get the newsletter, which you can get by hitting the news and notices button on the homepage of thesagearts.com, you can reply to that newsletter and tell me your stories or tell me what you think or criticize what I do. I don't care. I just like to hear and get that feedback so I can continue to work on focusing this podcast for you. And if you like what I'm doing and you want to support the podcast and give back, there are donation buttons on the homepage about halfway down through PayPal or Buy Me a Coffee. And of course, all these links can be found in the show notes or description section of wherever you are listening to this podcast from. And if you haven't done so already, please hit that follow button on your podcast player so you know when the new episodes are out. And if you want to leave a review, I'd love that as well. I don't ask for that enough, but I'd love to see that because that's also feedback for me. You can also write me or follow what's going on through social media, primarily Instagram. That's primarily what I work on at thesagearts.com podcast, but Facebook as well. You can reach me through messaging or any of the posts there at the Sage Arts Podcast on Facebook. And that said, maybe we go get a glass of wine.
I like wine. Yeah. We'll have a wonderful glass of wine.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Brett, for jumping into the podcast room with me so suddenly this afternoon.
It was very fun. Yeah, we had a good time.
Yeah.
As always.
You all go out there, figure out your rituals and see what you think of them. And then, of course, feed that muse and be true to your weirdness. And then join us next time on the Sage Arts Podcast.